Hi everyone. We're continuing with lesson 9 on measures of variation. Now thus far, we've discussed how to compute a population standard deviation and a population variance based on population data, and also a sample standard deviation and sample variance based on sample data. The purpose here being to estimate the values of sigma and sigma squared up in the population. We ultimately care about the values of these population parameters. But let's say that we know, or that we estimate, that the population standard deviation of a data set is, let's say, 10 points, like on an exam. Well, so what? So what that the population standard deviation is 10 points on an exam? What does that mean? How do we apply these ideas? Applications of SD, standard deviation. How can we use a population standard deviation or a sample standard deviation, assuming that it does in fact do a decent job of estimating the population standard deviation? Well, the easy answer to this is that we can compare the variation between two different populations. So for example, if we have a population of men and a population of women, then we can compare the standard deviation for the men with the standard deviation for the women. And maybe one group exhibits greater spread. Or if you consider two different classes, maybe an evening class and a morning class. Maybe the evening class has a very high standard deviation, a lot of spread in the scores, but the morning class has a small standard deviation, not so much spread among the scores. So if Professor Dumb's evening class has a much higher SD on a standardized test than Professor D's morning class does, then that could reflect a greater variety in the students in Professor Dumb's class. By the way, this is a takeoff on Tweedledum and Tweedledee, these guys. These two characters from Alice in Wonderland by Lewis Carroll. Hey, that copyright stuff's expired, so I can use it. All right, so aside from comparing populations, well, let's say that we just have one population. So the standard deviation is 10 points. So what? Well, the standard deviation can help us find how close to the mean. Remember, the mean was a key parameter that we planted our flag at. We can use the standard deviation to find how close to the mean we expect most of the population values to be. So based on the standard deviation, how spread out about the mean would we expect the values to be? And in number 3, in particular, can we find an interval of usual values for the population? So given a mean and a standard deviation, what would be a usual or typical value versus what would be unusual? So now we will talk further about applications of standard deviation next time.